Hey y'all, welcome back to the Reading Stack. I'm your host Hunter, and today I've got a wonderful book I want to share with y'all. It is the book, the classic Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, I'm so excited to review this book, to share it with you, and I hope it is a book that you will get to read in your lifetime, hopefully very soon. But it's such a great book. I read recently. I know I've been away for a bit. I was sick with COVID at first, and then I got a new job soon after. So I've been pretty busy for a minute, but it's been nice not to force it or to rush it, but to get ready to be back and putting out the YouTube and podcast, updating the Instagram page, just getting the life balance evened out to where I could devote more, I guess my margin of time to this to help share good books with y'all and, just the lessons that come out of books and the wisdom, most importantly. Well, guys, I thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited to share this book with you. This is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, Crime and Punishment was a book that was published by Dostoevsky in 1866. Dostoevsky is a Russian author, and this is one of the Russian literature classics, one of the best. It's 542 pages, so it's kind of that medium long read, I guess you could say. It's not terribly long, 2,000 pages or something, but it's not a very short read either. It's told in 6 parts with an epilogue. I want to read just a little bit of what Wikipedia tells you about the plot to where you kind of understand it. I don't want to spoil anything, but just kind of give you what's out there, just surface level, to see if maybe you'd be interested in the book. So to explain the book, the plot, according to Wikipedia, it reads, Crime and Punishment follows the mental anguish and moral dilemmas of Rodion Raskolnikov, an impoverished ex-student in St. Petersburg, who plans to kill an unscrupulous pawnbroker for her money. Before the killing, Raskolnikov believes that with the money, he could liberate himself from poverty and go on to perform great deeds. However, once it is done, he finds himself racked with confusion, paranoia, and disgust for his actions. His justifications disintegrate completely as he struggles with guilt and horror and confronts the real-world consequences of his deed. So that's kind of giving you just a little bit of what the book is about according, just to the surface knowledge that Wikipedia offers immediately. And to describe, the book, and so from that, the main character thinks he can get to, like, greatness, moral good through this path that is evil, essentially doing an ungood thing, with an aim to the good. It reminds me of Aristotle that it's like all actions, I could be misquoting it, but it's like all things intend for a good, any sort of like pleasure is good, but the way we go to it could be very bad and harmful, destructive, so on. So it's kind of like that, as he has this theory and this vision of what he could attain, but he has to go through this one action. It is basically like, if I do this, the good I do afterward would erase all the the bad and the nastiness of it. And just to tell you a little bit more about the book, like as you read it, it's a really thematically diverse book. I mean, like most of, I've only read the brothers Karamazov in Crime and Punishment so far. I have the rest of his books on my shelf, but it's a psychological novel. It has elements of a thriller as it just hits you with twists and turns, anticipation, suspense. It's a detective novel as well, as the police, are, I'll just say they're applying pressure. They're playing cat and mouse to see, kind of see what shakes out of it. And it's very exciting the way the police and Raskolnikov play a game. And it's also a love story, a redemption story, and, it's very much themed in, like, morality. That's a huge, huge part of it. But being a love story and a redemption story, when you see this on the shelf, Crime and Punishment, you're like, oh, eerie, bleak. Don't think you'd have a whole lot of that, like love, redemption as themes, but I find those are, some of the biggest parts and the parts that hit me the most, and one of my favorite, moments in the book is kind of the cat and mouse game, like I mentioned, that the police and him play, just because it's told through, from Raskolnikov, the main character's point of view, the anguish and the thoughts, and you don't know what the police know or what they're hitting him with, so it's very much like he's in mental anguish, just getting worn out by the games they play to, discover who committed the crime and things like that. Another thing in the book is Raskolnikov, to do a bad action in the beginning. To me, I find him as a sympathetic character, like I can understand in a way. One thing I think that is kind of relevant is thinking about crime as like a deviation of normal human behavior, like the most deviation, to where we break a law, steal, kill, so on. It's a deviant behavior, and you see Raskolnikov, he's a university student, he's 23, and he can no longer go to school because he can't pay for it anymore. He's just barely eking by, but he kind of goes through this depression phase he's in, where he isolates. He's a bit misanthropic or antisocial, you would say. He's not really supporting himself. I don't think really, doing like cleaning oneself, maintaining oneself, doing healthy practices. He's kind of just sullen, brooding, in his little apartment place, and his family that's, far away is kind of supporting him, sustaining him by, but he's really just in a bad place and withdrawn. And I can relate to that. I'd gotten my associate's degree from school, but I had plans, kind of like Raskolnikov, to go further, I guess, up the chain or the pyramid, so on, towards, some like hopes or dreams that I had at one point. But, through life and its turns, I had to quit going, and that dream kind of had to die, And I learned a lot from it, but I know during that phase of working through that, like what just happened, I know I was withdrawn some, and just, feeling wounded, but also like coming out of that like sort of antisocial and feeling apart, like I wasn't where I should be as like a 23-year-old as Raskolnikov was. Just really frustrated, and I didn't take his path, and I got through that, thank God. But definitely through friends, fellowship, accountability, just good people, rejecting the evil, that tries, if it's any kind of hatred or blame on others, or or like Raskolnikov develops this theory that he, I guess intellectually honest, he wants to try out and live out. And, it makes me think, like, it's a very important theme about his withdrawedness, if that's a term. How he's separated, or I think his name means schism, like a separation. He's pretty separated from the rest of mankind and society. It's typically where criminals are, if you follow the biographies of people that, were like serial killers, terrorists, all that sort of bad stuff. A lot of them have something happen in their life, or just maybe the way their mental state develops, it really separates them, usually, I think, to where they're not on the normal, healthy, social relationships and interactions, where they're in a bad place. And it seems like that's a place where really bad evil within the heart of man comes out, can, I guess, actualize itself, and And not only that, I think also if you look at like Asian culture, I know I've watched documentaries or shows and stuff, and it's like the idea of the Hikkikomori, I think it's called. And it's like a very big phenomenon of people that are very shut off, like their parents, support them through money and things like that, but they're not, they're just barely, existing just at home, not going out like into the sunlight or relationships. And it's been a real big like social problem over there. I think it's kind of interesting, but I think with this book, reading it, what I'm trying to get at is there's a lot of like helpful things that address that. Like you get to see somebody and get to know this character, and you see that and you're like, yeah, that's really not healthy. I really should get out today. I should do, what's going to be ultimately beneficial for me and relationships, my view of humanity. And I know like having COVID recently, as I said at the beginning, that was just a lot of like laying around and not doing the normal, exercises, hanging out with people. And I was like, oh, this sucks. It really not good. Not, it's a place where you have to really fight to have your, joy to maintain that. And when you just can't do the fun stuff, you enjoy in normally. Another thing in the story, is Raskolnikov resorting this crime. It's hard to think of him as like just an evil, super bad guy because you're spending so much time with him. And I think in the same way it was relevant to me because of my family growing up. They were involved in crime and criminal activity. And so most of the people I knew growing up, family, friends, and things like that would be what you would call criminals, but seeing that, they're real people, but, they make bad choices for whatever gain or, to cope. But in the story, you also see that with Raskolnikov. You're like, man, this is a confused dude. And you kind of root for him to go right, to snap out of it. And I think having a family or basically almost all the people I was related to were doing something criminal, at odds with the law and police and things like this, was very good. Like I really enjoyed reading that, and it just remembers you got to think even people that do evil, they still are human, and we share that in common. The good and the bad, as we would say, the virtuous and those that are, living foolishly or wickedly. And so the story's powerful, I think, and just how it shows Raskolnikov does this bad and suffers as human, but it's not like, he's just a total monster now, if that makes sense. So very interesting, just the sympathetic lens Dostoevsky, I think, is trying to give us about Raskolnikov, where you feel pity for him, I think. Now, why read Crime and Punishment? Why should anyone read it? Well, I think it's one of the greatest stories in all of literature, one of the greatest stories to come out of Russia. But not only that, it takes you into Russia very well. I mean, it's just so interesting to see how people lived in that time period in St. Petersburg. Just the way he paints the narrative through the city of St. Petersburg is very interesting, even though a lot of times it focuses on the intense poverty and rougher parts of town. I would think it's so good taking the visit and the trip into where the setting of the story is in St. Petersburg. Also, another thing, the detective story in Crime and Punishment is on point. I mean, it was really interesting because who did everything. So it's not the whodunit, CSI standard plot line, but it's rather who did it. Now what's going to happen next? Police on him, he's on himself. So it's very good, full of twists and turns. Another thing is you got really likable characters in this story, unforgettable characters, and you got really loathsome characters, really bad guys, evil characters. And so that variation of good character, he really made some good characters in the story. So I think, if you enjoy getting close to the characters, seeing what happens with them as well, not just the main of the main plot lines, but having an interesting cast. This story is very great in that. The story really grew on me as I was reading through it. Just as I read further, the interest and the build-up kept on going. And so I think I felt super energized as I read. So I think if you want a story that just grows on you, I think, and just gets better and better, I think Crime and Punishment is great for that. It's a great starter for Dostoevsky, and all the people's recommendations I could see, they were like, yeah, Crime and Punishment, go with that first. And I remember they said go, maybe on a Quora post, they said go with the Brothers Karamazov last. And I think it was my pride or something, but I said, yeah, I'm going to do the Brothers Karamazov first and then do Crime and Punishment next. So that's what I did, and you probably would be best suited to start here. It's a great primer, beginning for Dostoevsky, and he's just got a lot of great stuff out there for us to read. But this is a great starter. And another reason why you might really like it is the story. I think the most powerful thing I got out of it was the power of love. And I know that some people, it's like, love? What? When we hear that, we get all sorts of different ideas. And people throughout history have had all sorts of different ideas on love. Like if you go to the Wikipedia page for love, there's going to be probably like 29 things, ideas of love, empathy, platonic love, romance, different things like this. But the way the story unfolds with love as a core piece of it, I think if you read it, you'll just be blessed by it, and I hope you really will notice that, as you read this. And if you want to hear a good love story, you may not think Crime and Punishment is it, but get ready, it's awesome. And reasons why you wouldn't want to read it, well, it's 542 pages, so maybe you don't want to make that time sink, or, that might be just a little bit out of the range of what you want to read right now. Because it's above, just the standard medium, 200, 300 page read. So that may be the only reason I could think of, but as far as everything in the book and what it is, I think it's just super worthwhile, an adventure. But you may not want to read something that big yet. So, and what lesson could we really get out of Crime and Punishment? I think ultimately it's the transformative power of love. And I think this is something we see, just like put it in most practical terms, less the philosophical or theological at the moment. The lesson of love, is, I think that's a big and huge part of, as I said about my family, being involved in crime. I think love was the biggest element of that turnaround, that repentance, that switch where they would live, you might say, a deviant or abnormal life, and then to get switched on a good, positive, beneficial track. It was love, and I think a lot of the elements in our justice system that do have love connected to it, even though punishment is right, and justice, love is something I think just, we don't even know the power of. It's something incredible, and it's a lifelong journey to understand how to love and to accept love and to to walk in love every day. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons, just the power of love. And so I hope you will check out the story to see just how that plays out. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching or listening. I really appreciate, just the comments, the feedback I get from y'all. It really encourages me to keep reading, keep growing and learning. And not only that, to share and just hopefully to inspire somebody else to read, to search out some great stories, great books. So I really appreciate all your support, your kind words, and just to know there's some people out there reading some awesome stuff as well. So thank you, guys. So check out Crime and Punishment when you can. Y'all have a great day, and God bless. We'll have more books for y'all soon. Peace.